So let's say that we have our Mr. Hawes question open in front of us. And once again, what we have here is we have a trial balance, and you're being asked to take from the trial balance and create a income statement and a statement of financial position from these details. So you're given the information here. You've got your trial balance with the debits and credits. Down underneath, you're being given some information, and as I say, you're being asked to draw up the income statement and the statement of financial position. Okay, now let's all agree that preparation is a big part of the work that you have to do. So I've just created I've created 4 little steps that I want you to do every time you come to a question like this. Okay. First things first, I want you to take careful note of the year-end date so that you know the accounting period that you're dealing with. Most likely you won't get a 31st of December year end, okay? So we'd often find that much easier to comprehend, but here you've got the 31st of August X2 is the end of the accounting year. So the year that we're talking about is from the 1st of September X1 to August, the end of August X2. Okay, so that's the first thing to do, to make sure that you look and you see, because that's going to be relevant to your dates later on. So the first thing you've done is you have highlighted that 31st of August X2. And if it helps you, draw a timeline on your question paper showing you starting from the 1st of September and ending at the end of August, and then you can put a timeline underneath that to show any prepayments or accruals or anything like that. Okay, so we're doing our work at the 31st of August X2, and the year that we're dealing with is from the 1st of September X1 to the 31st of August X2. So that's the first thing, take careful note of the year end. Second thing, now we're going to go into the trial balance itself, and you need to remember, I expect expenses to be on the debit side and assets to be on the debit side. I expect revenues and liabilities to be on the credit side. So you should use your highlighter to differentiate. So expenses and revenues are going to go into the income statement, and assets and liabilities are going to go into the statement of financial position. And we're saying that we're expecting that everything on the debit side will either be an expense or an asset, and everything on the credit side we expect to be a revenue or a liability. So what you're doing is you're using your highlighter to match anything that goes into the statement of financial position. So I've used pink for those, and then anything that needs to go into the income statement I've used yellow for. And I'm using my highlighter to differentiate those, and I'm watching for anything that's different. So for example, capital is a liability. It goes into the statement of financial position, so I have it in pink, and it's here on the credit side, so that's where I would have expected it to be. Sales are a revenue. I expect revenues to be a credit. Go back to our little thing. Revenues are a credit. I would expect them to go in the income statement, so I'm making that yellow, and so on and so forth. And over time you'll just recognize these as being what they are, and you'll be ticking them off very quickly. Okay, so you're using your highlighters to identify everything that goes into the statement of financial position and everything that goes into the income statement. Okay, so third thing then, look for anything that's different than you would have expected. And the one that we have that's different here, if you roll down, you'll say rent rates and insurance, they're an expense. I would expect them to be on the debit side, but lo and behold, here they are on the credit side. Okay, so that's very unusual. So when I have a credit balance on an expense, that means that I have an accrual coming in from the previous year. Okay, so from the previous year, I have an accrual coming in, so I've got 110 there to start off with. So we're going to have a look at that, and what it means is that at the end of the previous year, so at the end of, we said that our year is September X1. So coming into September X1, we hadn't paid 110 euros of rent, and that's why it's showing up here for you on the credit side. So basically, it's on the credit side because it wasn't paid, therefore it's a liability, so it's on this side instead of where we would expect an expense to be on the debit side. So that's the third thing. Look for anything that that's different than you would have expected, and you would have put a big question mark here for yourself beside that 110, because you want to know what's going on here. I wouldn't have expected an expense to be on the credit side. Okay. Okay, and finally then go through the additional information one by one and tick the nominal codes that you're going to have to adjust. Okay, so let me see, here we go. So one by one I'm going to go through the information and I'm going to tick the nominal codes that I need to adjust. And in this case they want you to do, in the exam you wouldn't have to do the actual T accounts, you would only have to do the calculations, but here they want you to do the T accounts as well. Okay, so when I went down along here I saw, let me just minus this a little bit, make it a little bit smaller. Here we go. Pull back along. When I went down to the information, I saw that on the 31st of August X2, the inventory at the close of business was valued at 17750. Okay, 17750. So I'm going to tick inventory because I know I'm going to have to do something with inventory. And also then I need to say to myself, well, look, I'm going to need both the opening and the closing stock for my cost of sales calculation in the income statement. And I'm going to need the closing stock to be included in the statement of financial position. So as I've done here, I've highlighted the 17750. I would highlight that, and just beside it there I would write statement of financial position. Okay. Above that I would bring out, a little arrow, and I would say income statement, because that's going to go into both. And then up here I would have my tick and I would say, right, I'm going to have to do something with this figure as well here. So this is opening inventory at the 1st of September 2011, and this is closing inventory. This is the inventory at the 31st of August X2. I need this figure, this one down here, in both, and I need this one in the income statement. So that's fair enough, that's the first one. The next one then was that on the 31st of August X2, a rent, rates and insurance payment of £1540 was made by Mr. Hawes for 14 months to the end of September X2. And this wasn't recorded at all in his ledger accounts. Okay, so first of all, we're going to say it wasn't recorded in his ledger accounts at all. It's a payment, so I'm definitely going to have to record this in bank. So you can see here I've ticked bank, okay, to say I've got to do something with this. And then I've also got to tick the rent, rates and insurance account, which I have also done. Here we go, we've also ticked this one, because we're going to say we knew that this looked unusual. Okay, so we had this 110 coming in of an accrual. And then also we have this payment of 1540. It was made by him, and it was up to the 30th of September X2, and it wasn't recorded. So basically we've got to say, okay, I need to know what is the figure for this particular year for rent, rates and insurance, and I've got quite a number of different calculations that I'm going to have to do there. Okay, but all I'm doing at the moment is I'm getting ready. I'm highlighting to myself what I'm going to have to work on. So here I am, I'm ticking rent, rates and insurance as well. Okay, so bank and rent, rate insurance there. Heating and lighting is a payment made by Mr. Hawes for 7 months up to the 31st of March X2. So again, I'm going to, sorry, just close that guy. I'm ticking on my heat and light. Again, I've just written a little note for myself, 7 months up to March X2. And finally, no, 2 more still. Finance costs was only for 6 months up to and including the month of February X2. Okay, so 6 months is what we see in this finance costs. So again, I'm ticking my finance costs, and I'm saying the finance cost there of 140 is only for 6 months. It's not for 12 months. And last but not least, in addition to this year's rental income, Mr. Hawes has received rental income for 6 months of the next financial year. So this is an income prepayment, and the entire amount is included in the trial balance without distinction. So when we look in our rental income, so again we're going to tick the rental income. There we go, we've ticked it. So this amount that we see is not just for this year, it's also for other months from other years, and we're going to have to do a calculation on that. So what do we need to look at? We're going to have to look at finance costs, we're going to have to look at rental income, we're going to have to look at rent, rates and insurance, we're going to look at heating and light, bank overdraft and inventory. So we're going to look at those 6 accounts. We're going to look at those, we're going to adjust those, and we're going to put the new figures then into our template for our income statement and our statement of financial position. Okay, so we're nearly ready now. The thing that I would say to you is, again, in your exam you would just have to do the calculation. You wouldn't actually have to do the T accounts unless you were specifically asked, and if you're specifically asked then you would do them. But at this moment in time I'm going to say to you that in our book we have been requested to do those T accounts, so I know that I'm going to have to actually do these 6 T accounts. I'm going to have to put in the position as it's shown in the trial balance, and then I'm going to do any adjustments that I need. So in this recording I'm just going to open those accounts as they stand here from the trial balance, and in the next recording then we're going to see the differences that we need to make to them due to the additional information that we've been given. Okay, so I'm just going to go into my Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to go plus 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 plus, and you make sure that you have Mr. Hawes open there in front of you. So what's the situation? Inventory. I'm saying that at this moment in time the inventory figure in my trial balance is 5610. Okay. The rent and rates and insurance figure is on the credit side of 110. Okay, I know that's an accrual because basically I'm saying coming into the year I already owe 110. Okay, that's an accrual from the previous year, from X1. The bank figure that you have at the moment in your trial balance is an overdraft of 1580, but we know that there is more paid out of that that hasn't even been recorded yet, so we need to do that. Heat and light at the moment, it's told us that on the 31st of the 3rd X2 we paid 700, so we've literally just popped that in. Finance costs of 140 were paid on the 22nd of the 2nd X2. And rental income was shown there on the 31st of the 8th X2 as coming in, rental income of 1200. Okay, so all I've done there is I've just opened those accounts. Okay, and remember, if you were doing a question that went from the statement of, no, pardon me, from the documents, the original documents, that you were going from the trial balance, putting in the original documents, doing the prime books of prime entry, the nominal codes and the trial balance. You know, if you were doing that question, you would do exactly this. From the trial balance, you would literally just open the accounts with the opening balance that you were given in the trial balance. And that's all we've done here for the items that we know we're going to have to adjust. So let me just flick back there so that you can see those numbers. I got the number for finance costs on the debit side, for rental income received on the credit side, for rents, rates and insurance on the credit side, heating and light on the debit side, bank overdraft, obviously we would expect that as a liability, we would expect it to be on the credit side, and inventory as an asset, we'd expect it to be on the debit side, and there it is. And we literally just opened up those accounts because we had been asked, in this particular instance, we had been asked to show those T accounts. But remember, in the question you would only actually show the T accounts if you were specifically asked. Otherwise you would just do your little calculations for each one and put in those new figures into your income statement and your statement of financial position. And last but not least, with regard to my preparation, I'm writing out my template for my income statement. Okay, and I don't care whether I have all of these things or not, I'm just writing them all in. I might need to adjust these expenses. And I'm writing in my template for my statement of financial position. Once again, I don't care whether I have all of these items or not, I'm writing up my template and I'm getting ready to put in whatever I can. I do want to say to you that at this stage, if you wanted to, you could take all of your items from your trial balance that you do not have a tick on, and you could feed them across into your income statement and your statement of financial position. So you could bring off capital to the statement of financial position, you could bring in sales and sales returns, you could bring them off into your income statement and so on. You could do that at this stage. Okay, so there's our preparation. Let's just recap. What did we do? We checked the year end so that we knew what year we were dealing with. Next thing we did was we identified what belongs in the income statement and what belongs in the statement of profit and loss, and we highlighted those in different colours so that we can tick them later and make sure that we've covered everything. Okay, and we haven't left anything out. The next thing we did was we looked for anything different, and straight away we saw that rent, rates and insurance is an expense. I would have expected that to be on the debit side. It's not, it's on the credit side. So I know coming into the year, right now as we speak, I already had 110 that was owed there for rent, rates and insurance. So that was an accrual from the previous year. And then finally, my last one was that I go through the additional information one by one and I tick the items that I'm going to have to work with. Okay, so I've identified everything. Okay, so that's what you're doing on the question sheet itself. If you're asked, then you're going to do your T accounts. So you're just opening your T accounts with the numbers straight from the trial balance. If it's on the debit in the trial balance, you put on the debit in the nominal accounts. If it's on the credit in the trial balance, you put on the credit side. Okay, so I'm just opening those accounts and I'm writing up my template for my income statement and my statement of financial position.